Have you ever been to an old cathedral? Maybe you walk in from a hot summer street outside into the cool air, you feel reverent and maybe even start whispering, you look at the imagery around you and you start thinking about the more important things in life. Or maybe you've been to Disneyland.
Splash Mountain's my favorite.
Splash Mountain?
Splash Mountain, yep.
You know that feeling when you walk in towards the main entrance of Disneyland and you feel that you hear the music, right?
Smell the popcorn.
That's right. Maybe there's some characters waving and you see people from far and wide and you just feel this anticipation.
So good. I want to go now.
Yes, me too. The truth is that all these things, the music, the long walk itself, the characters, they all build this atmosphere and they take you on a journey and they build anticipation. Chris and I have been part of Hillsong Creative here in Sydney for over a decade now, and we've been involved in creating atmospheres through visual direction in services.
And today we're going to cover the topic of visual direction in services and events and the few key things we've learned along the way.
We're going to focus specifically on things like screen content, LED screens, projector screens, that kind of a thing used in live services.
And also share about the visual experience as a whole, from when someone walks in the front door to the final note of the final song, and what we think about when we're crafting the full visual experience. Our aim is that the lessons we've learned along the way would be keys that you can apply. As with anything we do, we have to understand and determine the purpose of what we're doing. Doing what we've always done with no particular reason, or as our senior pastor Bobby says, turning a gold value into a brass value, can be a damp cloth in creativity and be highly counteractive to moving things forward. When bringing beauty and care to the look of an event, we can break it down into two goals, particularly when it comes to church services, regardless if your church is happening online or in the room or even in your lounge room. So number one, we make it beautiful because we want to say welcome home. We're setting the table for our community. Now, if you can remember the last time you went to a friend's place, I don't know about you, but even if I've checked my calendar 10 times, I still get really nervous driving up to the front door. I check my calendar once more, and then I ring the doorbell hoping I've got the event right. Maybe that's just me. But when I walk in the door and if there's a smell of food and if you can hear music playing and laughter in the background, I know they've taken time to think about me. And I just relax and I'm at ease, and it actually is a way to open hearts. And that's why we prepare the room. So our church buildings, our auditoriums, they're much bigger than our homes, but the point is the same. We want to create an atmosphere where people know we've thought of them and they're welcome. The second thing is we want to create a wow factor, something that captures the hearts and arrests people. Before the first note is played or the word preached, we want people to sense there's something different, changing their expectation, whether they've walked through the door for the first time or the 100th time. Philosopher Simone Weil believes that beauty requires us to give up our imaginary position at the center and that a transformation takes place at the very root of our sensibility. When we come upon beautiful things that act like small tears in the surface of a world that pulls us through to some vaster place. I believe that perhaps in setting an atmosphere that's beautiful and has a wow factor, we can cause people to ponder about the beauty of Christ.
We're going to start breaking this down practically. So there are three things that we consider. One is atmosphere, the other one is attention, and the third one's storytelling. If you've ever seen a provoking art piece for the first time, you know that oftentimes it demands a reaction, maybe it's an emotion. And the visual tools that you have available can actually help set an atmosphere as well. The purpose of screen content being one of these visual tools that we can use would be to create an atmosphere. So for example, bringing warmth to a cold winter's morning. You can help build anticipation, like with the Disney analogy, and you can help people how to respond to a moment.
Yeah, it's actually good you say a cold winter morning because often we need to sometimes think like our pastors. They're really mindful of, people bringing their kids to church and how they're going to get in. So sometimes we do need to check the weather on a Sunday morning. Is it going to be really cold and rainy? And when people walk into the auditorium, we want it to feel warm and inviting. So we might actually put warm colored lights in. It's really simple, but it can change the atmosphere and the feeling. Or here in Australia, if we've had a 40-degree day, Sunday night we'll want the room to feel cool, help make that air conditioning feel like it's actually working. The other thing, I guess, I love music at home when I'm doing anything. Sometimes we'll put on certain type of music if we're cooking and it's loud and it's blasting and we'll dance around the house because what else can you do in lockdown? But on a Sunday morning, you want to think about what music you're playing before the service. So you might think about a playlist that is songs on the radio that if someone's coming for the first time, they'll go, oh, I recognize this. This maybe isn't too different. Or at conferences, we'll put on an orchestral playlist that feels grand and big, and the music builds as the lights come down for it to start. Again, I mean, we're going to laugh that we keep going back to Disney, but it's kind of that anticipation that, you know, it's coming. You might have live music, whatever it is. You can really think about the intention. Or it's the afternoon session of your women's conference and everyone's having the lunchtime lows. So you are going to put on a rock ballad playlist. Ultimate power songs where you can sing along. Now I've got a few, but what would be on your sing-along playlist, Strand?
Oh my goodness, I'd be too embarrassed to tell you, but probably, you know, Dolly Parton.
Really?
Yeah, I love a good hit, good old country hit.
Well, I love country, so no judgment from me. Yeah. All right, well, atmosphere is so important, but we also want to move on to our next point, which is?
Yes, number 2, attention. Now, I would consider myself a safe driver, and I'm sure every single one
He's very safe.
I am a very safe driver, objectively. Now, there are a few roads around Sydney, however. Sydney's a beautiful town, and there are a few roads around here where I actually find it a little bit hard to keep eyes on the road the whole time because they're so beautiful. So there's a highway near Bondi Junction. You drive, and the skyline and harbor opens up in a spectacular view, and it's really hard not to look for those few seconds. And that's because beautiful things demand attention.
They do.
You want to make sure that you can grab people's attention because distraction can actually be dangerous.
And when it comes to screen images, if you've got your LED wall behind your speaker, we've actually had challenges where we thought our artwork was awesome, but it's actually become a major distraction because we didn't consider the person in front of the artwork.
Right.
For example, sometimes we had a giant bird that looked like it was actually catching the speaker on camera. We also had times where the people in the mother's room probably thought that Pastor Robert had grown a hand out of his head because we'd misplaced imagery. So it's actually really important, and as artists in the church, to take that responsibility and think about how your artwork is translating behind your speaker so that people aren't laughing because of ill-placed artwork.
That's right.
So you want to consider the brightness, the texture, the color, any words that if they're just cut off might spell something that you're not trying to articulate. Because the reality is, even if you're not putting church online in the season, but it's just a feed going to the sides of the room or in the mother's room, you don't want it to be a distraction. You really want to set up the worship and the word in a beautiful way. But moving on, let's talk about storytelling.
Yes, point number 3, storytelling. Now, using screen content again as an example, it can communicate a story. So whether that's a really clear step-by-step hero's journey where you guide the viewer through each step of the story, or whether it's something highly abstract, it could still tell a story. So our good colleague Nathaniel Redekop is an amazing visual artist, and he uses this a lot. So each piece of screen content that he makes for music usually tells some kind of a story. One time, for example, he told me he used warmer colors to mimic a sunrise, and in conjunction with the lyrics of that song, it told the story of a new beginning. Now that was very subtle, but that's something that evoked a story within the viewer.
Which is awesome because it's not going, well, here's a literal sunset.
Exactly.
Which I think is so important, particularly in church art, because I remember my friend Rachel talking about, I thought if I was an artist, I had to have a cross and everything.
Right.
We don't.
Exactly. Now, you could also go more overt if you want, and it could have power. So I remember when we were recording the Youth Revival album, Nathaniel once again made a piece of media that was based on an artwork that had the hand of God and the hand of Adam.
Wow.
And it was a really clear way of telling a story within that. So you just got to pick and choose whatever works best for the set that you're doing. But the truth is that taking the viewer, the congregation member, the person attending on a journey with storytelling, it has the power to open hearts. Yep. It has the power to propagate empathy.
So good. And that's lesson 1, knowing the purpose of using visual arts in a live context. Next, we'll continue with screen visuals and talk about how to use surfaces effectively and also work with technical teams to bring your ideas to life.